Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to a town hall with Councilmembers Jim Oddie and Malia Vella. I'm Sarah Henry, the city's public information officer, and I'll help moderate today's event. Councilmembers Oddie and Vella invited special guest Gray Harris, AUSD Board Member, to join us today. Please note, all participants have been muted. To submit a question, use the chat feature. Following remarks by our speakers, they will be available to answer your questions. I'd now like to turn today's town hall over to Alameda Councilmembers Jim Oddie and Malia Vella.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We will start today with a short recap of last night's council meeting. We had a special meeting, which we covered all of the agenda items on, and then we had a regular council meeting, which actually was continued to tonight at 6 p.m. And so I will let Councilmember Oddie give a recap of what we did enact last night.
Thanks, Malia, and just to kind of level set here, I think this is like the second or third one of these we're doing. Other council members are doing the same thing. I know Mayor Ashcraft has done a couple town halls, and if you can't make them, they're going to be kept on the city website, so you can look at them and review them at your leisure. Hopefully we'll pass some information on that you might not otherwise know. I know that the mayor is having Congresswoman Barbara Lee on Friday, so I encourage people to listen to that. She has some good information. Councilmember Vella and we are going to have two guests from the state to talk about business aid and assistance, and that's our Assembly Member Rob Bonta and someone from the Small Business Administration. So we're just doing our best to get information out there to everyone, and this is interesting time. So if you have any suggestions, please let us know. So some of the things we were able to do last night, one of them was related to the budget. As you know, we've seen a drop in sales tax and a lot of our businesses are closed. So we had to plug about a $7 million hole in our budget. So we took some efforts to do that at last night's meeting. The other thing we wanted, I'm going to skip the grant one, and Malia's going to talk about that too. We did as you know, we issued in the first one of our meetings, we had a moratorium on evictions for residential tenants. We expanded that to eviction ban for commercial tenants. And then last night, we actually did a rent freeze through December 31st, 2019 for tenants that are eligible for rent control. So we did grants you want to talk about, Malia, right? So
yes.
We also did
so
some.
We passed.
Oh, that's right. We did some temporary zoning changes, and some of those will allow businesses to actually sell products that they might not otherwise be permitted to do. For example, maybe you're a barber shop that is not an essential business, but maybe you can sell toiletries or razors or something that is essential. So some of these things also had to do with relaxing some alcohol and beverage restrictions for our local restaurants so they could actually sell alcoholic beverages to go. So we are doing the best we can as fast as we can to help support our residents, support our businesses, and actually support our tenants. The city is a landowner at Alameda Point and the theater and other places, and we're trying to find ways that we could help them with rent deferrals. And we're going to have some the staff report come back on potential rent abatement for them because, that's a big issue we heard yesterday in the town hall with the mayor and Councilmember Vella and business leaders. So I'm going to turn it over to Malia, who's going to talk about an exciting program. In its outcome, not that we have to have it, but some grant funding that's available to some of our small businesses.
Yeah, so last night the council gave staff authorization to repurpose some of our funds, like from our facade grant program, to actually help our small businesses out. So the city will be giving out about $7,500 grants to businesses in need. Those are small businesses with 1 to 25 employees. We've also, staff will be evaluating the applications There's a few things that need to be submitted in order to qualify W-2s, as well as information, financial information from the business. We're hoping to expand on this initial pool of money like several other surrounding cities. And we're looking having staff look into public-private partnerships where we could perhaps add to the funding so that we can help as many businesses as come to us looking for aid. So we're excited about that. I think this is a good first step, and hopefully that'll be, I think, rolling out in the next couple of weeks. All right, and with that, I would like to introduce our guest for today, Alameda Unified School District Board Member, Gray Harris. Gray will be giving us an update on distance learning. As we all know, our school district, like other school districts and schools, has transitioned to distance learning. For those of us who weren't able to watch the meeting, the last school board meeting last week, there was a pretty robust presentation that was put forward by staff that answered a lot of questions, but we've been getting a lot of questions from our shared constituents, and I think they want to hear from Gray. So thank you, Gray.
Thanks, guys, for inviting me. It's nice to see all of your faces on here. So I am Gray Harris. I am on the Alameda Unified School Board. I am also a staff person for the California Teachers Association. So I'm dealing with distance learning, not just in Alameda, but sort of like all over Alameda and Contra Costa County, because I work with teachers in all of those areas. And in lots of school districts, and hearing about what's going on statewide. I think a lot of the questions that we've gotten so far were covered in the presentation that Malia referenced. I was going to share a couple slides from that in a minute, but just to touch on some key topics that I know a lot of people have been asking about. I want to assure everybody that Alameda's practices are very much in line with what's going on in this county and also in Contra Costa County, and as well as statewide, although I think that we're doing some things actually a lot better than some of the other counties statewide, but very similar to the rest of Alameda County. We're all going to be in a similar place when we return to school, whatever that looks like. So I want to assure people, that we're not going to be falling behind other students and things like that. I think that what we're offering here is very much like what everyone else is offering. I know direct instruction has been kind of a hot topic. I've gotten a lot of questions about how much time a teacher should be, face-to-face, like on a meeting like this with students. And I think what we're really trying to do is make sure that it's developmentally appropriate. So I know that, some people would really love if their first grader could be online face-to-face with their teacher all day like they used to be at school, but I just don't think that's realistic for a first grader. And they need to get outside, they need to move around. That's also part of what they do during the regular school day. And so, we're trying to kind of make it so that students will get direct instruction, but will also get some opportunities to do some academic stuff, outside and on their own and with their family. Grading has been a big issue all over the place. And I think what we've pretty much landed on in this whole area is that most people are doing credit, no credit. And universities have actually said that they're going to accept that. So UCs and state universities have all said that they are expecting credit, no credit grades to be coming on transcripts. So that's going to be pretty universal. And that we really have a hold harmless idea for grading, because we understand that distance learning is not totally equitable because people have different abilities to access the distance learning opportunities, right? So if you have a student who is watching their siblings during the day, or working because maybe one of their parents is unemployed or whatever, they're going to have a way different situation with distance learning than a student who, just has everything set the way they need it in order to access every opportunity. So the hold harmless idea would be that the student's grade that they had when in-person instruction ended would be their grade, except that they could improve their grade through distance learning. So it's not going to negatively impact students that way, because we know that not everyone's able to access it as in the same way or in an ideal situation. Another topic that's come up a lot is special education and how those services are being provided. So special ed is being provided pretty much the same way that it was before, or that is the plan. You know, obviously not in person, but like if your student was supposed to be accessing services with a special education specialist teacher, that teacher should still be interacting with that student on Zoom or on WebEx or on Google Hangout or Google Classroom or whatever. Our special education teachers are still working just like our general ed teachers, and so they're working with our teachers to modify stuff, and they should also be interacting, you know, directly with students. Every student with an IEP should have like a case manager that the parent knows who that person is and who's interacting with that family. And with that, we're also still providing, you know, the same types of mental health services that we did before. You'll see in the presentation here in a minute that we have some resources and links in that presentation to mental health services that are still being provided that are our usual providers, and then some additional ones as well. So if a family needs to access some mental health support, that's also still happening. So I don't want people to feel like that's stopped. A couple more, like 2 more topics, and then I'll go ahead and share some of the presentation from the other night. So we are also doing food for students, grab and go meals twice a week. It's Tuesday and Thursday from 11 to 1. It's at Wood, Earhart, and Alameda Point Collaborative. Any one of those sites you could go to on Tuesday or Thursday from 11 to 1. And you do not need a student to be there with you to pick up the meal. So I know that was a concern that some people had, like, do I have to bring my kid out with me when we're not supposed to do that? No, anyone can pick it up. We're not checking IDs. We're not asking like where you go to school, nothing like that. You can grab a meal, just say you have a student and take it and go. And then the last topic that I've gotten a lot of questions about, and then of course I'm curious to hear if you know, you guys on here have questions, is essential project construction. And you know, we passed a bond recently and a lot of construction work's been going on. And I think especially around like NSNL, which is very obvious that it's under construction, people were concerned that if we stop all construction, how would we ever go back to school? So there were some essential projects that we approved to continue construction on with lots of parameters around what that looks like. You know, people need to be distant from each other. There needs to be ways to wash your hands. People need to wear masks, like all that kind of stuff. But some essential projects are continuing because we want schools to be functional if we can go back to school, like when after the summer, or even maybe during summer if that becomes an option. So we are continuing some of those projects that would be essential for school to be able to reopen. So I know I talked pretty quick. I did want to share my screen for a minute and show you a couple slides just so you can see what this board presentation looked like the other night. And then certainly I'm not going to read it to you. You can find it on the district website. There is a page just all with all COVID-19 info. So a lot of what I just said is on the district website, and there are links and you can click through and take a look, like the mental health services, the lunch, like all that stuff I mentioned. So this is page 11 of a lengthy presentation we looked at last week. And so this I thought was a good overview of like the general idea behind distance learning, which is that it's really an opportunity and it's not a thing where we're doing work that's necessarily required with a specific due date that then you get a grade on. So it's a little bit of a different mindset than maybe what you thought of when we had traditional like face-to-face classrooms open. So I thought this was a good slide so that people could think of it as an opportunity rather than something that we would penalize anybody for. Okay, and now it doesn't want to page down again for some reason. Huh, well, I can stop sharing and reshare, I guess. I don't know why it would be doing that. Okay, then, and then maybe it'll fix it, I don't know. So these are some of the ways that the opportunities are provided. This is where it kind of spells out like how much time a teacher would be face-to-face on like a Zoom check-in meeting with their class. And then there would also be time for a student to check in alone with the teacher if they have a question or they need help with some kind of assignment. So there's like a classroom type face-to-face time, and then there's also just time when the teacher is available for check-ins for those students that want to do that. So this is how it would look for elementary, middle, and high school. Let's see if it'll do it now. There we go, now it's working. This is what the sample teacher schedule would look like. So I know there have also been some questions about like, so what are teachers doing all day? You know, there's a lot of planning that has and continues to go into this. This is like not the way teachers were trained to teach for the most part. So it's taken a lot of modification on the part of the teachers to be able to make this work and figure out, you know, how to have a whole class of like second graders on Zoom and what would you assign that they could kind of do on their own, and how do you handle those check-ins and the questions, and how do you support parents who need help. So this is also in the presentation. Just a couple more slides I was going to show. So this is like a suggested sample elementary school schedule for a student now, not for the teacher, right? So like, how would you fill the whole day if they're only on Zoom with their teacher for half an hour or whatever? You know, what could they maybe do the rest of that time that that doesn't require the parent to sit there and entertain the kid the whole day? These were some ideas, and these links work when you look at this on the website. So all of these pages there's also a sample middle school and a sample high school schedule. So the links work when you look at it on our COVID-19 website. And then this summarizes the grading. So I kind of already talked about the grading, but if you wanted to look at it in more detail, this is a summary of how elementary, middle, and high school grading is going to happen, which is also in the same presentation. And then the last one, I was just going to show that this was the page about the mental health services that we are still providing. And so I thought our staff did a great job actually putting it all into one presentation, because it was a lot of information. So it's a pretty comprehensive thing if you just open this one link to their presentation from last week's board meeting. So I think it was pretty good. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen. And I don't know, hey, there's Theo. Hi, Theo. And if there are any questions, I would be happy to do those. Or if there's any questions for Jim and Malia, like they can answer stuff about the city also with the time that we have left. I think, Sarah, you're on mute if you're talking, or Jim has his hand up.
I'll ask the question. So this is all, via the internet, right? I mean, what provisions are we making for those families that may not be able to afford access to the internet or don't have a tablet or a computer or anything like that?
Yes, so a couple of things about that. One, there are a lot of places that are offering free internet right now. I believe those links are also on our school district page. So if you have a student at home and you need internet, you can get it either super low cost or even free. I think the school districts, or many school districts in the area, have also been securing hotspots so that we can hand those out to families so that you can have internet kind of like wherever you are without having a subscription, at your house. And then I know we distributed Chromebooks and iPads and things like that to every family that we could reach that said that they needed one. And there was a way that families came in and picked up those materials so that everybody, I hope, at this point has some way to access the distance learning. And of course, if they continue to tell us they don't, like, we can continue to get people the stuff that they need. Good question. Thank you, Jim.
I have another one. So, I mean,
Sure.
you mentioned the mental health services, and I know the city helped with some funding for that, but have you noticed an uptick in folks using those services? And maybe this question isn't for you, maybe it's for us to think about in general, but a lot of parents are probably in need of some assistance as well. So maybe if you want to chat a little bit about that.
So I think the only one that we would really be able to track for sure would be using our own in-district mental health services, right? I mean, we have counselors and psychologists and, you know, people on staff. Some of the links are to outside services. So I don't know if we would know for sure just due to privacy issues, but that's certainly something I could look into and see if they'd at least be willing to tell us, has there been an increase? Like that doesn't really violate anyone's privacy, right? If it's sort of general and non-specific. That's a good question. I can follow up on that.
This is a question for Board Member Harris. With regards to summer school programs, folks have said they've seen that Los Angeles has canceled theirs. Is there any indication on what's going to happen over the summer?
So it's interesting because I was just on during my work for the California Teachers Association, weekly we have a check-in meeting with all of the teacher leaders in the area for Alameda and Contra Costa County. So this is something that's actually being worked out everywhere right now, like literally at this moment. So there's very few districts, I think, so far that have decided for sure what to do about summer school. I think the ones that have decided have put in place distance learning, like more distance learning. But I think there are a lot of places where there's conversations around, would there be ways to do credit recovery? Because our in the past, if you haven't like followed our summer school program, it's often been just for students that need to do like continue their special ed services, or students that are English language learners who we're trying to kind of help, you know, do some extra things that would help them the next year when school resumes. And I don't know for sure if we've had that conversation in Alameda yet, concretely around what summer school might be like. But I know in the area, at least, there hasn't been anyone talking about doing it in person yet. But you know, these things can all change. Like, you know, we can get an update tomorrow that says maybe schools could reopen, and then we'd have to look at modifying things sort of on the fly. But my guess is it would probably be a continuation of something like this, and it has not been decided. So.
Another question was regarding sports programs and if you have any insight on the future of those.
That's a hard one too, because you know, right now the shelter in place orders do not allow for like organized sports really to happen. And so no, I don't know for sure the answer, but I do know, you know, that we want kids outside, moving around, getting exercise, doing something with their bodies. So I think it's an important thing that we should discuss around, you know, how are students going to get like PE credits and things like that if they need them, or would it just be credit, no credit based on, you know, students saying I went and did this or I went and did that. But we wouldn't be able to reopen sports until kids can be around each other safely, obviously.
Here's a question. It says, how are teachers and staff doing? We wish them all the best. They're doing a great job.
I think the stress level is starting to level out. So I don't know that it's going down, but it is, I think it reached a peak and it kind of leveled out in all of the employees that I've talked to for the school district, because I think at the beginning it was super stressful because it was just so much unknown and nobody knew what it would be like and how they were going to get to what it would be like, and were they even going to have time to plan, or did it need to start tomorrow, or, you know, it all just kind of happened in this panic and this rush. And I think now that there have been a couple weeks that have gone by, people have kind of gotten into a rhythm of like, okay, I can do this. Like, I don't prefer it. I wish I could see my kids face to face. I would much rather be in my classroom, but this is something that for a short term we can like make happen. And, you know, it's not as scary as they thought it would be. So I think some teachers had a big fear of starting tomorrow on Zoom with a class of second graders. Like, how is that even going to work? And when they did it a few times, they realized like, okay, it's not perfect, but it works. And so I think that now we're getting to a place where everyone feels like we're getting through it. We feel not comfortable, but like we can do it in the short term. And then I think everyone's looking forward to getting back to like face-to-face, being able to see their kids. I think everybody really misses their kids. That's mostly why teachers get into teaching. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Here's another question about enrichment courses in elementary school. We haven't heard anything from our music teacher, for example, and those types of courses are so important in many ways.
So that's interesting and something that I can ask about, because it was my understanding, you know, that teachers like specialist teachers like music and stuff were still providing some kind of content. So it could be that they're providing that content to the classroom teacher, who's then incorporating it into their whatever they're doing and giving it to their students. That's a possibility. But certainly we still have our specialist teachers, you know, working. So something should be happening. So I'll find out more about that.
Yeah, and I'll just add, as a parent, personally, my child is in 4th grade, and they do have once a week. They're with their PE teacher once a week, and then they're with their music teacher once a week. So I don't know if it's different by school, but he's certainly able to check in with both of those enrichment teachers.
Yeah, that's more like along the lines of what I thought was happening. So if that's not happening at every school, I would want to find out. Yeah.
Yeah, this person says again that there's no music component in 1st and 3rd at Otis to check into.
Okay. Yeah, I will definitely check into that.
Here's another question about the future of recess and what that looks like starting in the fall.
Well, I feel a little redundant in saying we are not sure yet because there are so many things we're not sure about. But if you're asking what I think, just me personally, in listening to all these different districts talk about it, is that there still could be recess, but we're gonna have to figure out how to do it not with all the kids on the yard at the same time, right? So maybe like a class at a time doing recess, or 2 classes with enough space that students all don't need to be smushed together. So lunch is probably gonna look different. Recess would probably look different, right? At least at the beginning when we go back to school. And then, of course, I, like everyone else, hope that one day things just go back to what they used to be like, because kids like being around each other. But I think maybe as we kind of take baby steps, or to use all the governor's like words that he likes to use, as we toggle the dimmer up and down in real time, we may have to do some staggered stuff that's different, and like not have everyone at recess at the same time. There would be like a rotating recess, where I just take my class out, and then when I go back in, another class comes out. Something like that is what I would imagine at the beginning.
Another question, have we furloughed, and this might be actually for, I think this is for you, Board Member Harris, but I think for the council members as well, have we furloughed support workers, janitors, maintenance?
No, we have not. I don't know what's happened at the city level, but we have not, because there are still some essential things that we have our classified staff doing. So like the lunches that I talked about, maintaining like safety kind of at the schools. There's still like they need to be checked on. There's still some cleaning happening. There's still some things related to the essential projects that I think we have our own district people working on still. A lot of that is contracted out with a construction company, but some of that is our own regular staff doing it too. So we've been really careful, of course, to keep people, separated and with masks and gloves and cleaning supplies. But I think there are still some people who go to the sites and make sure that everything's okay there. So no, we have not furloughed anybody. Do you guys want to answer anything from the city side on that one?
Hi, yeah, we at the city level, we've actually asked, we haven't furloughed anyone. We've asked staff, I think our city manager has been working with department heads to determine who's essential, or whose jobs are essential. Everyone's essential, but what jobs are essential. And then also repurposing folks if at all possible. And we've some staff have volunteered. On Monday, I was at the food bank for several hours handing out food with some of our staff that had been repurposed. So it depends week to week. Like last week, the folks that I was volunteering with were out working and worked a full 40. There was projects that they were working on. Yesterday, they were waiting on being dispatched to some other projects. And so in the meantime, they went over to the food bank to help out.
And I know we've also rearranged some of our HR policies regarding leave and banked leave, and if people are getting sick. So we're doing the best we can to protect our employees, both physically and as far as financially that we can. I don't know what's going to happen next budget cycle. My goal, I think everyone's would be to make sure we maintain our core essential services, but we're going to have to see how that all plays out after we get out of this. But I will add that, I think our city, whether it's our first responders or our staff, they've responded admirably to this. This is a crisis that, just came on us, and they've all worked really hard to react and respond and put together, sound policy recommendations for us to implement. And the council meetings have pretty much been taken up by everything COVID-19 related. So I just want to give a kudos to our staff, our city manager, our city attorney, our city clerk. Sarah, our PIO, is handling multiple town halls. And even my colleagues, we've been able to agree on pretty much everything that we've done to help assist our residents and assist our businesses. So I think we're doing a great job here in Alameda. We'll see what tomorrow brings, but I'm pretty proud of our staff and our city.
Board Member Harris, here's another question about graduation and for seniors. And we've seen a lot about this, but can you just tell folks about that?
I think there's been conversation, and certainly our student board members, we have one student board member from every high school that sits on our board with us. And I know that they've brought up having groups meet and try to figure out how they could do alternative graduation celebrations, because this is a hard year, I know, for seniors who were looking forward to all of the graduations and the celebrations and like all the things that come with senior year. And this is a super weird end to all of that for them. So I know that there are groups talking about it that directly involve all the students, but I don't know that any decisions have been made yet. I've seen lots of stuff in other cities, where they put up like the senior portraits down like the main street, like made huge ones that hang from like the telephone poles and things like that. So I don't know what our students will come up with as something that still makes them feel proud of all they've done at school and moving on to their next phase and some closure and stuff. But it won't be graduation as usual, obviously.
Just a reminder to folks to use the chat feature. If you don't have it up on the right side of your screen, there's a bar at the bottom of your screen, and if you click on chat, you'll be able to chat a message and you can enter your questions there.
So Greg, can I ask another question? Maybe you kind of answered it earlier, but as far as when we come back, what planning is the district doing? You talked about recess, but a lot of kids are pretty close to each other in the classroom, and we do have limited facility size. So I don't know, has there been any thoughts on that? And the second part of that question, and maybe it's too soon to answer this, but have we learned anything from this that maybe is a best practice that we can use going forward and keep in place? That kind of is an unexpected bonus.
That's a good question, the second part. So the first part of your question, though, I think the only thing that we really know so far is the same thing that the governor said, which, is he threw out kind of randomly one day in one of his weekly update things, daily updates, that, maybe school would have to be on staggered times you know, where not everybody comes to school at the same time, kind of like what I described with recess, but also with just daily instruction. And so that's really all that's come out so far of anybody mentioning anything about coming back to school. So I think there's still so much like unknown about, I mean, certainly if we can get to a place where we have testing and people are comfortable being around each other and it's safe and we don't have this problem anymore by the time we go back to school, I think our goal would be to get it as much back to like it was before in terms of kids being able to be around each other as we could. But we certainly would plan to change that if we need to and figure out something that would work, kind of like what we're doing right now. I don't think anybody ever really thought this was going to be like this. And our employees and our district office people and our leaders have really come together and like figured out something that's going to work. And it's happening on a really short time frame when everybody was worrying about their own family and all that stuff. So I feel very confident that we'll figure something out and it will work and it will happen and it will be good. But what exactly it will look like, I don't know if I can answer that right now, unfortunately. I wish I knew, because I know everyone wants to know, teachers as well as parents and and everybody, but I don't really have an answer. And then on the second part of your question, you know, what's been good? I think teachers have appreciated, you know, having more contact with parents over this time. You know, I mean, there's been more like parent questioning, you know, how does this work? And teachers figuring out how can I get parents the resources they need to really help at home? Because I think that, you know, one of the best indicators of student success is like how involved your parents are. A lot of it is about your classroom and your school and your classroom teacher, but a lot of it is also about what happens at home for the rest of the hours when you're not at school. So I think the more that we can be in partnership, and while I know it's been kind of a stressful partnership right now, just because this was all just kind of like dropped on everyone, if we could figure out a way to maintain more kind of like homeschool connection, I think that would be really beneficial to every student and every classroom. So I'm hoping something like can continue along those lines, you know, where we talk more often with parents and we have a better understanding of what's happening at home and how we can help and how we can support and vice versa. Yeah.
That's great. A couple more questions coming in. This one for Councilmember Vella and Oddie. For renters, what is the process after the 60-day eviction moratorium expires? How long will renters have to catch up? Also, what is the likelihood that school won't resume on site in the fall for the board member? And then is there a plan for schools if they reopen come September and there's a second wave of the virus? Lots of questions there.
Yeah. You guys want to go first, Malia or Jim?
Malia, you want to jump in or?
You're on mute or something.
Okay, well, besides the moratorium that we put into place on evictions, the Judicial Council, maybe it was about 3 weeks ago, I can't remember the exact date, basically said that courts will not be hearing any eviction cases. They will not be accepting any filings. They will not be doing any proof of service. You know, they're basically not going to be doing those. And I want to say, I could be wrong, but I want to say the sheriff said he wasn't going to be serving any, but I might not remember that accurately. If the way it's set up now, that if you get a deferral of rent from your landlord, you can't pay your rent, we have set it up with a 6-month payback period. So we didn't set up any rules on, you know, when that had to be done, whether it was, you know, in equal payments or in a lump sum. So a lot of that will be worked out probably between landlords and tenants. But, you know, if it turns out that we're having an issue there, we'll have to look at it. But these particular late payments are not going to be subjecting you to a potential unlawful detainer for non-payment of rent. And there's going to be a reasonable time to pay those back. One of the things we did look at is having our staff is going to come back after talking to some of the stakeholders and seeing if we have to extend that period. There's some legal issues regarding how long you can collect rent for. I think after a year, it may be too late. So we want to make sure that, you know, to the extent we can, people stay whole, right? But, you know, there has to be some fairness because, you know, we looked at it, for example, if you have a commercial tenant that, you know, we're deferring rent in Alameda Point, and if we defer 3 months rent and we give them 6 months to pay it back, and the first month after the shelter is lifted, they're going to have to come up with 1.5 times the amount of their normal rent. So I don't know if our businesses can absorb, you know, an immediate hit of 1.5 times the rent after, you know, not having any and still trying to ramp up. So those are the things we're still looking at. I use this term.
We're also not charging, we're also saying that folks can't charge late fees or interest on the back rent owed.
Right.
And so that's just to make sure that people can actually find a way to work out paying up and getting up to speed on their rent payments.
So on the part of the question that had to do with, so if we went back to school and there was another outbreak, I think it was something like that. Sarah, you can correct me if I'm wrong. What would we do? I think we've really learned a lot about how to do this that we're doing right now. And I think people would actually pretty quickly be able to go back to doing this if they needed to. Like I said before, I don't think this is what anyone prefers, teachers included. But you know, if it's necessary for public health, then you know, I think we've really figured this out, you know, for the most part now. And we would just go back into like a shelter in place and distance learning mode for as long as we had to, as long as we were told we had to.
Here's somebody that says, another thing that worked, our parent-teacher conference just happened to be the same day the shelter in place happened, and we were able to do it by FaceTime. It would be great if that option continues to help keep those lines of communication open.
Yeah, I mean, FaceTime works great. I think in most of the other districts that I work with, they have pretty much left it up to what the teacher is comfortable with in terms of technology, like which platform works for them. So some teachers are like, it's super easy for them to do FaceTime. Some people prefer, you know, like a Zoom meeting like this or a Google Hangout or a whatever. I don't know of many places where they've said, no, it must be this way, right? So it's really at this point up to the comfort of the teacher. And I'm assuming that that comfort is going to grow the longer we're doing this, right? Like people are going to get comfortable with more and more platforms where maybe at first they only knew about Zoom. And, you know, now they're trying out other stuff and it works really well and they'll keep doing it, right? I know that's been true for me.
I think
right? Try a new thing, you realize it's pretty much like the other thing, and then you can keep doing it.
This person is clarifying that just hoping the virtual option continues when we can all be in the same place together again, so that there's the option for both in person and virtual.
I hope so too. And I maybe, I said a minute ago, like, I think that's been a valuable thing out of all of this. You know, I do hope that home and school will maintain like a stronger, more frequent connection like we have right now. I think that that's been really good.
For Councilmember,
Malia,
oh, go ahead.
Malia has a surprise she might want to reveal momentarily.
Okay.
Ooh.
I know she's stepped aside, but
I can pin her video here.
Oh, there she is. There she is.
Okay.
Hi. The reason I've got my mask on is we are on Saturday, Councilmember Oddie and I had a town hall meeting with some of our representatives on the Alameda Healthcare District. One of the things that came up was that the Eden Township Medical District had set aside several, I think it was $250,000 to buy N95 masks. And one of the board members is here that we had talked about reaching out to, and he's dropping off some masks that they procured, and those masks are going to go to Alameda Hospital. So I'm waiting for him. He's bringing the masks up right now. So I wanted to just acknowledge him, Gordon Galvin. He's the board member from the district, and he's literally bringing up the masks right now. So thank you to him.
Yes, thank
Great,
you.
Krista.
If he can hear us, or is he only in your earpiece?
Thank you, Gordon. I will, thank you. So we've got some anti-fog, anti-dust masks and some N95s that I'll be dropping off at Alameda Hospital later today. So thank you to Eden Medical District. This is what it's all about, all of our different districts working together to make sure that we're getting proper PPE for all of our staff at all of our area hospitals.
That's great. For Councilmember Oddie, this is a question about just asking about turning down federal funds for first responders.
Not sure of the context in that, but you know, we accept any and all funding that matches our values in the city of Alameda. And I know that we received FEMA trailers. Marilyn Ashcraft, our mayor, was a strong advocate of that and pretty much got those for us. So give a big shout out to our mayor, Marilyn Ashcraft, for working on that. So now we have some places to house some of our most at-risk homeless individuals here in Alameda for this crisis. I think we just received a HUD grant for, what was it, $685,000. I think Sarah can probably share more about that. And, you know, we've always been successful in getting safer grants. So, I mean, that's money that actually pays for a substantial portion of our fire service. So appreciate the money the federal government has given us. One thing that I thought was missing from the last stimulus package was assistance to state and local governments. So hopefully when the mayor has her event Friday with Congress member Barbara Lee, that folks can ask her about that, because you know there are some getting flipped off here in the middle of our town hall. That's kind of super interesting. I mean, there's the possibility of another stimulus package, so it'd be interesting to hear from our Congress member, you know, what plans are in Washington to help cities, because our budget, you know, has the potential to be devastated. You know, thankfully for us, you know, the two revenue streams that are impacted the most, sales tax and TOT, you know, hotel tax, you know, we're not as dependent on those, but, you know, property tax and transfer tax, and the longer we go without having sales, and if our property values depreciate, you know, we're going to be struggling. But, you know, we're going to be staying on top of this as a council, and our staff and our finance department and our auditor and our treasurer. So looking forward to, you know, dealing with these challenges like we've been elected to do.
I don't have any other questions. So folks, if you have questions, please enter them in the chat feature. Councilmember Vella, how many masks were there?
200. We have 250 masks. They're the KN95 masks, yeah, we'll be able to drop them off to Alameda Hospital. I'll be dropping them off right after this. So it's good. These masks are actually last longer than the normal N95s that they've had, and obviously there's a backlog on these, and you know, a lot of people are putting money towards actually buying masks, but everyone's waiting on actually procuring them and getting them. So, you know, I think this is a good step that we can actually bring them over to the hospital and have them there. Alameda Health Systems has been very open about collecting donations, and Alameda Hospital is part of Alameda Health Systems in terms of getting PPE. And so, yeah, it's great that all of our medical districts are working together on this, and making sure that all of our first responders have the proper protective equipment, so that they aren't transmitting cases, and we can all feel comfortable about going in and not getting other people sick. Yeah, we heard from Tracy Jensen. She sent us an update today, including some more of the information about the cases. I'll be sending that over to you, Sarah, so that you can get that information out.
Great. And just so folks know, so these are all recorded and on the city's website, which there's a shortcut at alamedastrong.org that goes straight to the COVID information page. And when you get there, there's a tab that says video gallery or something like that. And that's where all of the virtual town halls and other video PSAs that we've recorded are living. And we also have another page of links and resources, and some of the resources that we're getting from these town halls. Like, it'd be great if we could get the presentation that you did today. Board Member Harris, we're putting those.
Sure.
So I do have one question saying, what happened last night and using the virtual platform, why should non-emergency items be considered at council?
So we last night we continued item, I think we had a regular agenda as well as our special urgency matters. We continued the regular agenda to tonight. We did have a robust conversation about one of the items, item 6B, which included some charter proposals, and the council unanimously decided to table that and actually cut it down in terms of what would be on the table for discussion. And there's 3 items that we are going to be looking at, but that won't be until the meeting on May 5th. Those provisions include the charter provision, which is actually very relevant right now, about remote meeting access and how many consecutive meetings you can, quote unquote, not be physically present for under the charter. We have some rather obscure language that needs to be updated about that, and it also prohibits people from taking parental or family leave away from the city. So if you have a sick family member and you left the city for, say, 30 days, technically the council would have to approve that leave. So things like that. We also, there were 2 other provisions that we're looking at. The rest got taken off the table. Councilmember Oddie, did you want to mention what the other 2 provisions are?
I was going to talk about what the regular agenda items were that we are going to talk about. But I think the Charter Committee is going to come back with a revised staff report. Be posted tomorrow, right? So we'll get to see what their ideas are. I mean, there's a discussion on safe streets, and our transportation staff has been able to work remotely and get a lot done. So they're going to bring back some sustainable transportation choices that the council asked them in September for. And there's a thing about ADU, a couple cleanups of our code, and then there's a lease for Pacific Pinball also on the agenda. And then I think there's an urgent issue for the Housing Authority regarding their choice of attorney. So those items are not that pressing, but they're also not that controversial or won't have a lot of discussion, except for maybe the transportation, which I'm looking forward to that presentation. So.
And I think those concerns are also still here, right? We still have safe street issues. We had a cyclist that was killed while the shelter order was in place. So just because we're sheltering doesn't mean that we are going to stop work on making sure that our streets are safe for every mode of transportation.
I know we're getting to the end here, but I do have one more question. And before that, I just want to say that somebody wanted to say thank you for the virtual meeting. Really appreciate the face-to-face and helpful information. So got some positive, some good love there. So this person's question is, does Alameda have any plans to put contact tracing into place?
So what?
For the testing, does Alameda have plans to put contact tracing into place?
I don't think we do at this time. Councilmember Oddie?
I'm not aware of any, but I definitely think this is something that we will be talking about in the near future.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll see what the governor's plan for reopening is, and what we need to do to help support it.
Yeah.
So I will say I want to thank everyone for showing. Like Sarah said, these will be on our website, and encourage you to visit other council members. Our colleagues are also doing these, so it's a wealthy source of information. We're all doing them on different parts and different topics. So I think between all of us, we're doing our best to keep the community informed. I think the school district for what they're doing, that this can't stop on a dime like a battleship and then turn it around is like amazing. And, their team over there, their superintendent, I see Susan Davis is on the line here. She's probably been overwhelmed doing all of the PIO work, things she probably never thought she'd do. But I think everyone here in town has done a great job. We're all coming together as Alamedans, makes us proud to be Alamedans, and see how great our city has responded, whether it's supporting our businesses or getting equipment like Malia's doing, or I got donations today for our first responders. There's businesses donating dinner to our police department. So I think we're all doing a great job, and let's keep it up, Alameda, because I think we can be proud of how we as a community have stuck together and come together during, incredible time that none of us have ever lived through in our entire life. So I just want to thank everybody in our city for that.
Thanks for doing this, Jim and Malia. It was nice to see you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for all the good questions, everybody. Those are really good questions.
And the cat.
Thank you.
There's the kitty.
The best part of the Zoom meetings.
Oh, step on the computer.
Goodbye. Thank you. Thanks, Board
Goodbye,
Member
everyone.
Harris.
Thank you.
Bye.